Starting us off at number 10 is the hilarious comedy The Hangover, the classic story that follows Doug and three friends driving to Las Vegas for a wild stag party 2 days before Doug's wedding. Yikes. One morning they wake up in Vegas not remembering a thing and realize that the groom Doug is missing. Through a hilarious adventure, the three hazy and very hungover pals try to retrace their steps to find their friend. The movie has us on the edge wondering if Doug would make it back to Los Angeles in time for his wedding. Seems like some innocent humor, right? Wrong. I actually went to see this movie in theaters with my sisters and parents, and let me tell you, I really wish I didn't. It was definitely a funny movie, but there were things I could have laughed out without my parents sitting next to me. For starters, that ever so famous nudity scene by Mr. Chow. Not something I really wanted to witness with my dad. But it got even worse when the movie comes to an end and they find the camera that has pictures of all the things they did the night before but couldn't remember. Pictures of nudity, drugs, sex, basically everything you could imagine that would make you completely mortified to watch with your parents. It was a bad decision on my part. Don't make the same mistake I did. In at number 9, we have a movie that often gets confused as a love story and pornography. 50 Shades of Grey. The movie first came from the book written by E.L. James and is now a trilogy distributed by Universal Studios. The story follows a deepening relationship between a college graduate named Anastasia and a young business billionaire named Christian Grey, hence the name 50 Shades of Grey. You can easily be drawn into this love story as it explores the twisted side of Mr. Grey and how he controls and manipulates the young girl. Intriguing, right? Well, what people often forget is that these novels were known for erotic romantic films, and rightfully so. These books could easily be placed on a shelf next to Playboy. The books go into extreme detail of the couple's twisted sexy time, which explores S&M, violence, toys, change. Shall I go on, or are you getting the hint? You better bet that the movie didn't leave out any details of it either. Listen when I tell you that these are 50 shades you don't want to watch unfold with your parents. Alright, at number 8 we have The Wolf of Wall Street. Now, this movie is a brilliant movie, don't get me wrong, but it's a brilliant movie about some of the most unredeemable, terrible human beings you'll ever see on screen. You feel kind of bad as you find yourself actually enjoying this movie, but that feeling gets much worse if you're watching it with mom and dad. The movie is set in 1987, where Jordan Belfort, played by Leonardo DiCaprio, takes an entry-level job at Wall Street brokerage firm. But while he's still in his 20s, he creates his own firm, Stratton Oakmont. Belfort goes on to make a huge fortune by defrauding wealthy investors out of millions. This part of the story mom and dad will approve on, until you get to the parts of graphic sex, drug use, and drug use during graphic sex. I think I've given you enough reason to watch this one alone. In at number 7 we have a comedy classic, American Pie. I feel like this one is common sense that you shouldn't watch it with your parents. Nothing about this movie would suggest that you should. Any of them for that matter. There are actually a total of 8 comedy films following this American Pie story. When you search the 1999 film online, you can see the movie title with the description romance/comedy. I think that's a bit misleading. But if so, then it definitely isn't your typical romantic comedy that would be okay to watch as a family. American Pie follows the raunchy explanation of the most eagerly anticipated and most humiliating rite of adulthood, known as losing one's virginity. In this hilarious lesson of life, a group of friends decide to take action when they realize their reputation is sexual no-hitters. Without going into any detail, let me just say that after watching this movie, you'll never look at apple pie the same way again. In the number 6 spot, we have a hilarious yet very controversial movie, Borat. Outrageous situations occur when Borat, a popular reporter from Kazakhstan, comes to the United States to film a documentary on what makes America a great nation. Sounds kinda nice when I describe it like that, doesn't it? Well, let's just say that along the way he manages to offend just about everyone he meets. The worst part about it is that a lot of his gags along the way were actually real and not scripted, which is why some people could see it as the best part. It made it even funnier. I guess it depends what type of humor your parents have, but I think the extremely racist jokes and naked wrestling scenes are enough to keep them out of your movie night. Alright guys, here we are at number 5 with Magic Mike. Now, most kids go to great lengths to avoid watching certain movies with their parents, but for some reason, this one doesn't join that list. I kid you not, I have had girlfriends who have gone with their mothers to go see this movie in theater. Better yet, also the large live show that's now touring the world. I personally don't get it, but hey, no judgment, to each their own. So you might be wondering, what is so magical about Mike? Well, by day he makes ends meet any way he can by detailing cars or designing furniture. But nighttime is when he really gets to display his talent by headlining in an all-male strip show. The movie follows the stripper lifestyle, and you guessed it right, there is lots of stripping involved. I get it may be easy on the eyes, but I feel like mine might start to burn if my mom's sitting next to me drooling over these half-naked dancers. Ew. And at number 4 we have another comedy classic, Wedding Crashers. The hilarious duo Vince Vaughn and Owen Wilson teamed up in this movie as the leads. The movie follows their characters John and Jeremy, who are divorced mediators and spend their free time crashing wedding receptions. Sounds like the kind of people I want in my life. Just kidding, because not only do they use these wedding receptions for free drinks, but also to take vulnerable women to bed. Not something mom and dad would likely support or find very humorous. The movie came out in 2005, and once again, if you look it up online, it says romance/comedy. I don't know what happened to romance, y'all, but don't let that fool you. Sliding into our number 3 spot is the first animation movie on our list, Sausage Party. You would think a cartoon would for sure be family friendly. Not this one. This movie has more sex jokes than any other film on this list. But if you read the description of the movie, you would never know. The movie takes place at a supermarket where life is good for all the food items on the shelf. Each food item is voiced over by hit stars like Seth Rogen, Kristen Wiig, and Edward Norton. These cartoon foods can't wait to go home with some happy customers. Soon in, their world comes crashing down as Frank the Sausage learns the horrifying truth that he will eventually become a meal. After warning all his pals of their similar fate, they all devise a plan to escape their human enemies. See, like I said, this story seems hilarious and totally family oriented. False. The film received a rating R for strong, crude sexual content, foul language, and drug use. You're welcome, I've officially done my part in saving you from making the mistake of popping this cartoon into the DVD player on family night. At number 2 we have the mystery thriller It Follows. It blew up on Netflix back in 2015 and hit the box office at $23.3 million. Don't be sidetracked by the ratings though, although it's a good thriller, it's not one you want to watch with your parents. After I tell you a little bit about it, you'll understand why. Actually, let me just say one sentence and see if it's enough for you to believe me. Here we go. After a carefree teenager named Jay sleeps with her new boyfriend Hugh for the first time, she learns that she is the latest victim of a fatal curse that is passed from victim to victim through sexual intercourse. Was that enough for you? This horror movie is viewed as a metaphor for STDs. Inviting mom and dad to watch it with me? No chance in hell. Finally, in our number 1 spot is a movie I wouldn't suggest you to even watch with your friends, The Human Centipede. I feel like I shouldn't even have to tell you not to watch this with your parents. It's very much common sense, and this is one I would probably judge you for if you did. Surprisingly though, this disturbing horror movie was an absolute hit when it came out in 2010. I remember being dared to watch it because it was so disturbing that most people had to turn it off. A horror movie might be something worth seeing as a fun family night, but not this one. This movie is about 2 American girls on a road trip through Europe where their cars break down alone a night in Germany. They head to an isolated villa to take shelter for the night. They wake up in the morning to find themselves in a makeshift hospital along with a random Japanese man. This is actually the home to a psychotic surgeon whose lifelong fantasy is to connect humans together by their gastric systems. I might puke. And yes, he really does it. He makes a centipede out of humans and keeps them as his pets. The scenes are graphic, raw, and very disturbing. You can barely get through it alone, let alone with your parents there. Starting off our list, number 10 is the new movie Hustlers. The movie is basically a movie all about strippers and stars J-Lo as the lead and has a special appearance from the one and only Cardi B. The plot of the movie follows what it is like to work as a stripper and how a group of girls work around the clientele to basically rob them of money. An economic collapse makes their income decrease, and they end up devising this dark scheme on how they can take back their lives and their money back. There's actually deeper meaning to the movie than just seeing some hot girls dancing on poles. Personally, I would watch this with a parent, like my mom probably, but I would never watch this with my dad, or both of them together. I think my mom and I could like laugh it off and be like, get it girl, you go J-Lo, but watching this with my dad would be like going to a strip club with him. How uncomfortable. And at number 9 is Brokeback Mountain. It is a legendary movie and the majority of us have watched it several times, but hopefully not with our parents next to us. Your dad might like Western movies and your mom might adore adore Heath Ledger, but this is not a movie that should be a family experience. The movie is incredible and got great reviews, but is known for pushing the envelope when it came to what was acceptable in the film industry back in 2005. The movie follows the story of a love affair between two men who both have a family and a wife. They keep their affair going over the course of 20 years, and the movie can get really sexual at some points between the two men. Not to mention, a lot of traditional parents would have issues with the content of the film even if they were watching it on their own. However, I feel like our world is in a more accepting place right now, which is awesome, but some things are just better to watch on your own, I think, or with friends. Regardless, I love the movie, but I would not watch it with my parents. Sliding to the number 8 spot is Bruno. Borat was on our part 1 list, so it only makes sense that Bruno would make it on this one. There's basically nothing about the movie that would make you want to watch this with your parents. You're basically watching Sacha Cohen walking around almost naked the entire time. Not to mention, it can be incredibly offensive to some people, but I guess it depends what type of humor you have. Throughout the movie, he pokes fun at serious topics like politics, race, child and religion, and that is just a few things. The list really could go on and on. That doesn't even include the way he portrays the homosexual culture by using very cliche expressions and behavior. I mean, just look at the movie poster. It also includes one of the weirdest and most uncomfortable sex scenes I have ever witnessed. The details are honestly too inappropriate for me to describe on here, so if you're feeling brave, go look it up. But make sure your parents aren't around. Up next, number 7 is American Psycho. Some people would debate this is one because they think their parents are cool and into edgier stuff like this movie plot. It is an amazing movie, we cannot lie, and still has one of the greatest endings of all time. It follows the story of a man named Patrick Bateman who lives a double life as a gruesome serial killer. The plot examines different psychological elements that make this man a complete monster. It's what you would expect from a serial killer drama. There's lots of gore, blood, and disturbing images. It also doesn't help that it is based on true events. The movie isn't for everyone unless you're okay with watching threesomes, axe murdering, and people being chased with a chainsaw. Up to you. It's a good movie, so I won't tell you not to watch it, but it's definitely not one that I would suggest at a family movie night. At number 6 is Ted and Ted 2. You wouldn't think a movie about a talking bear stuffed animal would be inappropriate, but do not be fooled by how cuddly he looks. The movie was rated R for crude and sexual content, inappropriate language, and drug use. Throughout the movie, the teddy bear smokes a lot of weed, has sex, and says the F word probably 10,000 times. The movie is filled with so much sexual content, it is not even funny. Well, it's kind of funny. My parents actually watched this movie and thought it was hilarious, so I know that they're cool with the adult humor in it, but I don't think I need to sit next to them and embrace that dirty and vulgar comedy. I don't know. It's definitely one I would rather watch with a group of friends. I feel like I could be chill about this movie with my parents now, because believe it or not, I am an adult, even though I don't act like one. But if I was younger, no way. Halfway through the list at number 5 is Eurotrip. Similar to the American Pie movies, you can really expect to see sexual content, nudity, partying, basically all the stuff you would never want your parents to be around for. Especially because most teens are doing the majority of these things that are in the movie. Sorry to bust your bubble if I have any parents on here. The story follows a teenager named Scott who forms an online friendship with a German student named Mika in hopes that he will get to pass his high school German class. He later finds out that Mika is a smoking hot blonde girl, so he travels to meet her with a group of friends. From there, the group of horny teenagers travel to Europe together, hence Eurotrip. It is rated R for sexuality, nudity, language, and both drug and alcohol content. No parent needs to be a witness to all of that. Here we are at number 4 with Spring Breakers. The movie plot was an interesting idea. I actually really enjoyed it, but the content was a little too awkward to be watching with mom and dad by your side, in my opinion. The movie is about 4 college students who are broke, so they rob a diner and head down to Florida for spring break. The police end up catching up to them and they get arrested and put in jail. They end up getting bailed out by a drug dealer named Alien, and 3 out of the 4 girls decide to join him in his life filled with crime and money. For 80% of the movie, the 4 girls are in bikinis in all of their scenes. James Franco plays Alien, and his character is clearly a total creep who takes advantage of these younger girls. The movie shows a lot of drugs and even a threesome pool scene. So unless that's something you want to witness with your parents, I suggest picking another movie. Those damn threesomes. In the number 2 spot on our list is The Antichrist. The movie has been titled the sickest film in the history of cinema, but at the same time, a work of genius. The movie opens opens with a scene and the death of a child who happens to fall out of the window as its parents are getting busy in the shower, if you know what I mean. After feeling an unbearable amount of guilt as parents, they move to a cabin in the woods to try and heal from the traumatic incident. But things go from bad to worse, and we see the mother hacking at her own genitals with a pair of scissors. It's been said that 4 people fainted during the scene in their seats at the movie theater. The whole concept of the movie is twisted, but somehow it kind of pulls you in because it's a very interesting and unique plot. But it's one that I would want to experience on my own. Not with my parents. Probably not even with my friends, to be honest.
In at number 10, The Last Temptation of Christ. Anytime that you play around with the image of Jesus, you are sure to rile up some religious communities. While Martin Scorsese's take on the story of Jesus, played by Willem Dafoe, resulted in protesters showing up at premieres calling the project offensive. In Savannah, Georgia, for example, the county commission even passed a resolution against the film. The movie would also trigger protests in places like Oklahoma, Texas, and other small cities in the US. Perhaps the worst part is if you actually watch the movie, you can see how truly uncontroversial it really is. Yet even so, theaters that showed the movie in Salt Lake City and Los Angeles were all vandalized. Even Martin Scorsese was targeted by death threats from TV evangelists. The threats were apparently so abhorrent that he required bodyguards during public appearances for several years. In at number 9, The Bunny Game. This 2010 American low-budget film was shot for a measly $13,000 and centers around a female and a hitchhiker that are kidnapped and brutalized by a truck driver. Sounds terrifying. As you can imagine, the British censor boards had a field day with this one. The BBFC immediately refused the classification for this film on the basis of its shocking depictions of sexual abuse. They would later add that the movie was unacceptable to the public. They also took a hard stance on this as well, saying that there may be no version of The Bunny Game that British censors would ever find acceptable. In at number 8, The Evil Dead. This 1981 release of the supernatural horror film was directed by Sam Raimi and executive produced by Bruce Campbell. After producing the short film called Within the Woods, Raimi was able to secure $90,000 US to produce The Evil Dead. Thanks to producer Irvin Shapiro and Stephen King giving the film rave reviews, it ended up grossing $2.4 million in the US alone and a total of $2.7 million worldwide. It's amazing though, with a film that's so campy as this one, that censorship boards would even have an ounce of concern. When it was screened for the BBFC in 1982, the officials' decision was actually split. Some felt that it was over the top and couldn't be taken seriously, while others found it quite nauseating to sit through. The board's final decision was that they needed to cut out about 49 seconds of the footage just to release it. In at number 7, The Last House on the Left. Released in 1972, this exploitation horror film was the directorial debut of Wes Craven. Amongst the little praise that it got from critics, most saw it as vicious, and for decades the film was banned all over the world. In the UK, this film was especially controversial, with a heated debate about what was suitable for the public that would rage on for decades as well. Australia didn't even release the film until 2004 due to the monumental problems they believed that it would cause. In at number 6, Antichrist. Ironically, starring Willem Dafoe and Charlotte Gainsborough, it follows a grieving couple that tragically lost their son at a very early age. I say ironically because he was playing Jesus, now he's in a movie called Antichrist. Most critics say that the film is nearly impossible to sit through due to its graphic and shocking scenes, claiming that even those with iron stomachs would have a difficult time. When the film premiered in 2009, there were reports that 4 people had fainted in just the opening scenes alone. Following that, it was banned in France after they received widespread panic from a Catholic group. Although just because some countries saw it unfit, this does not mean that everyone hated it. In fact, the film was massive in Denmark, with critics and audiences calling it a grotesque masterpiece. Sounds like the name of my next comedy special. A Grotesque Masterpiece by Johnny Rogers. In at number 5, The Exorcist. This American supernatural horror film has had controversy surrounding it since the very beginning when it premiered in 1973. It's an example of censorship boards in other countries suddenly changing their mind about it once it was in circulation. For example, the film used to be available on home video in the UK, but it suddenly vanished off the shelves after the BBFC chose to deny certification for it. Their reasoning was that they did not want impressionable children to see it. For nearly a decade, you would not be able to purchase The Exorcist in the UK. However, in 1998, the BBFC came around when a limited time theatrical run for the movie was a smash hit. However, it still wouldn't air on British television until 2001, almost 30 years after its initial release. In at number 4, I Spit on Your Grave. The chronicling of a woman that is brutally assaulted and then enacts her own equally brutal revenge, was met with a terrified reaction when it was released in 1978. Robert Ebert called the movie so sick, reprehensible, and contemptible. He couldn't even believe that such a film existed and claimed that it did not have a single shred of artistic distinction. Canada had initially banned the film before turning that judgment over to the discretion of individual provinces. The UK released their own fully censored version, while Norway, Iceland, and West Germany banned the film due to its shocking nature and support of violence against women. Oddly enough, Australia didn't ban the film until 20 years after its release, which at that point really does nothing at all. And most countries have rescinded the ban, but to this day it is still illegal in Ireland. In at number 2, Canada. This 1980 Italian film was all about shocking viewers with its cannibal and documentary style, which no one ever thought could be a thing, but Italy said, hey, hold my pasta. Billed as one of the first found footage horror movies, it has also become the most notorious. It is presented as a movie within a movie, with the majority of the film revolving around a missing film crew. To add to the shock factor, they killed real animals on set, making the fake deaths of human characters even more believable. What's even more insane is that they had all of the actors sign an agreement not to appear on TV shows or any public ads for an entire year. This just added fuel to the fire that the film crew had actually been killed off for the movie. The director was even arrested on charges of obscenity and suspicion of making a snuff film. Last but not least, on our number 1 spot, Faces of Death. Originally released in 1978, Faces of Death was filmed with a documentary-like style that centers around pathologist Francis B. Gross, who's played by actor Michael Carr. This narrator then presents to the viewer a variety of footage that was meant to shock the world. It shows the different ways that we can experience death, but the realness of it, being like a documentary, kinda started to upset people. Due to its extremely graphic content, Faces of Death was banned and censored in 46 countries, with the United Kingdom prosecuting the film and adding it to the video nasty list due to it violating their Obscene Publications Act of 1959.